Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Farming Focus, the podcast for Southwest farmers brought to you by Cornish Mutual. I'm your host, Peter Green. Now, agriculture is pretty consistently named the most dangerous industry to work in, based on figures from the Health and Safety Executive. Are we doing enough to address this and talk about it outside of Farm Safety Week? Well, health and safety is this week's topic, and to discuss it, I'm joined by Jane Gurney, who is farmer and founder of the Tilly Trailer Pass, and Dom Jones, who is risk management leader at Cornish Mutual. Jane, welcome to the show. Please, can you introduce yourself?
My family have been farming in the village of Everton, which is on the borders of Bedfordshire and Cambridgeshire. And I'm the seventh generation to have farmed here. So very lucky with two more heading forward. And obviously the managing director of the Tilly Pass. So that takes up quite a bit of our day, but I'm still an active partner in the farm.
Great. Thanks ever so much. Dom, can you tell us a bit about yourself, please?
Thanks, Peter. So I'm Dom Jones. I lead the risk management team at Cornish Mutual. My role is all about helping farming and rural businesses spot the things most likely to cause harm or disruption, and then putting practical controls in place that work in the real world. That can be anything from safer yard setups and traffic routes to machinery and trailer checks, to simple processes around training, loan working, and trying to involve the whole family or team in day-to-day safety.
That's great. Dom, thanks ever so much for that. So the latest health and safety executive stats again place agriculture right at the top when it comes to workplace fatalities and serious injuries. Dom, from your perspective, what is it that stands out most in these figures?
So I think what stands out for me is that it's the same themes year on year. A lot of the most serious incidents are linked to everyday familiar activities like moving vehicles and machinery, livestock handling, working at height, and maintenance jobs where people are trying to just get it done. It's also striking that these incidents often involve experienced people, not just new starters. So it isn't simply a knowledge issue at all. It's the combination of time pressure, fatigue, working alone, and kit or routines that have become normal over time.
So that's really interesting. It's something I wanted to dig a bit more into anyway. You said yourself that it feels like the themes don't change that much. And we alluded to the fact that in the introduction that we hear this again and again. Why is it that as an industry, these stats don't seem to move forward? You know, you talked a little bit about some of the reasons there, but can you just expand on them? Have we just reached a ceiling? Is there just inherent risk? Is there a lack of resource in sort of one or two-man bands? What do you think it is?
I definitely think it's all of those things. I think that there is a bit of a normalization effect. People hear the numbers every year and it starts just to feel like background noise. The challenge for farming as an industry is making it real without being preachy. Behind every stat is a person, a family, and a business that's completely changed overnight by incidents that happen. The good news is that we don't need hundreds of changes to make progress. I think consistent practical habits and small improvements repeated all year round is where we reduce that risk.
Jane, I'll bring you in now. When Don was talking about the fact that perhaps we have a tendency to normalise the risks and these statistics, you were nodding. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we do. I think that the risks are always compounded by speed because we're fighting against the weather. We've got the financial side of things. We're in a hurry. That bit of the kit's not probably quite performing. And we aren't really having time or thinking we haven't got time to stop to make these decisions. And I think that habit forming of good practice is really essential. It's something I always pick up with the young farmers that don't understand the thought pattern of the designated walkway and why painting a line on the road makes a difference. And it's the fact when we're on autopilot, listening to our music in the cab, we're making repeated trips in and out, let's say from the combine. Our brain will tell us, danger, danger, this is a danger zone, there could be someone walking. That's the significance of it. Once you explain it, they think, oh, yeah, that's true. We're thinking about going to young farmers or seeing that person down the pub we'd planned to meet. And I think that is it. We've got to realise that we've all got a part to play, and everyone has to, adhere to these basic safety changes, not just wearing a high-vis jacket, but making sure that we're thinking about moving vehicles and repeated journeys. I think it takes everyone to work together.
Yeah.
But I also think that we're moving forward with hearsay. There's far too much talk. There's far too much debate about how you could do it. Just do it how you're being told to do it. There's an accident behind everything the HSE put together. They don't just sit there dreaming up the most inconvenient process to put forward to farmers. There's a reason. There's usually someone's life behind it.
Jane, if I can continue with you, you alluded to the fact that you head up the Tilly Trailer Pass. Can you tell us a bit about your own personal journey and where the Tilly Trailer Pass comes from? It's a very real, a very tragic experience. And, if you can you share a little bit about what happened, please?
Yeah, I can. So my son Harry was 19, and in 2014, he took a harvest job. Now, I helped him look through the contract. He'd been born and bred on a farm. He was nearly 20. He was more than capable of doing this job, and he was cautious. The problem was that the machinery was not up to standard. So we ended up with him towing a trailer that when he was descending a hill, it pushed him, and his tractor was not particularly big. The trailer had been towed by someone else who'd gone home for the weekend. This was the last job. He should never have been really moving this grain, but they wanted him to return with some oilseed rape. So they swapped his trailer out, and the previous operator, so putting a combination together that had only just been slotted together, that hadn't been tried and tested, hadn't been thought about, the risk hadn't been assessed. There wasn't a proper safety portfolio, and the trailer pushed him, and his tractor mounted an underpass of the A1, and the trailer hit the top of the cab, and that cost him his life. But the really tragic thing is you can think it over and over and over, but we can't change it. All we can do is help to save someone else's teenager or someone else's life. And that's where we have to concentrate. So we don't normalise the fact that he's dead. But the thing is, there were 3 other young farmers killed that year. There was someone killed towing a trailer last year on the road every week, lightweight trailer or heavy towing. And, it is a really serious issue. So that's why we set the Tilly up. We wanted to help young people to have a voice and to be able to walk towards a machine, see the sticker on the back, think, right, someone qualified's maintained it, it's been standardised. Now, if we do our daily checks, which they can use our free app to do that, we've set an app up for the manufacturers, they can click on it and use it for free. That's got 1 million users, and no one pays a penny to use it, no one pays a penny to go on it. You can access it through the website or through an app. And if they do their checks, they can take some control. Because in most cases, manuals are kept clean in the office. The operator never sees the manual. It's not attached to the trailer. So this really helps with that balance and the fact they can take some sort of, young people particularly want to please, don't they? And I think if they can take control, they can read the manual. People can print the manuals off. If they're a few years old, they can contact the manufacturer. So that's really helped. That's where we wanted to go. We want to help everybody. To begin with, I thought I could, but obviously just saving, we don't know how many lives we save, but just getting up in the morning and helping some other people to connect is what we do, or why we do it.
So there's so many things that you've shared there, and thank you very much for sharing what must be a really difficult story, no matter how often that you share it. I find it really interesting that you talk about the fact that there was a completely untried combination, so a different trailer on a different tractor with a newer, younger driver, and it sounds like he was carrying a different crop behind him. Just a number of unknowns there, and you talk about the need to just do that assessment. I'm really interested in what you say about the app that's available, and I think your point about young people being keen to please is a really important one. So, what do you say? And perhaps you have this question, young farmers clubs. If you go and talk to them, you alluded to that a moment ago. If you have young people who are apprehensive about talking to employers or foremen or managers about taking that moment to assess a risk. They might not even have to use those words, but how do you encourage them to have those conversations?
Well, it is really, really difficult because we see owners contacting us, so managers of farms and estates who are taking a really important middle place there. They are really, really responsible, and we don't always see them approachable. So we'd say, make sure that you're getting the right training. If you need to check your trailer, you can access on the app a little video showing you how to do it. You can share it with your colleagues. We don't encourage people to store digitally. We think that they should use some sort of a tick box exercise, which helps them then to record their findings. And if they're not towing that combination the next day, it moves on, because otherwise we haven't got a thorough backup. So we see if there was an issue 3 days ago with that machine, it can be clearly seen by the person who's doing the checks on the Wednesday, for instance. So having that control is really important. They can always ring me, and they do. I've had phone calls at 10 o'clock at night saying, should I shut the chute on the back of my baler because I'm going along the road and the farm manager says I don't need to? Can I, or should I? And then you've got to say to that person, well, here we are, and this is what we should do. So giving them the confidence. I see lots of jobs advertised for harvest staff. And I think please take it very seriously. Share that with your parents or someone more experienced. Ask the questions and don't feel embarrassed. If not, click the button on the app, ring us up or ring the trailer manufacturer or the dealerships and ask. It's free to do. No one minds getting a call.
And we talked a little bit about the app. I was having a look on tillypass.co.uk earlier. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's sort of slightly different from the Tilly Trailer Pass. So one is an accreditation, an inspection done by perhaps a dealer or someone like that, and one is something that the operator can do to sort of assess the risk. Can you just give us a bit of a rundown of the differences between the two, please?
So the Tilly Pass is based on the fact that everyone is standardised and they're doing the same inspection. They have to be fully qualified land-based engineer or HGV tech to do the heavy kit. We will give them some extra training and support. So a dealership, for instance, comes forward and asks if they'd like to be authorised, and we'll put them through for authorisation. That they're part of that. We have our own insurance, they have their insurance, and the idea is that they will go out and represent the inspection on farm. They're going to inspect it, they're going to service it, and they're going to make sure that trailer, its running gear, its brake linings, its towing eye has got the wear and tear for 12 months going forward. That's what we're really interested in, not that one day, but it hasn't got that wear and tear, then we will look to replace it, to set it in a standardised way. And at that point, it gets a Tilly on the back that has a unique number on it. It's recorded with the paperwork. Right. You get the paperwork. The middleman, which is the dealership, will keep the paperwork, and we will get the paperwork through the post. It's really important because if you're filling digital postage in, then third parties doing it. So that piece of paper that we get, beam of the trailer, might have greasy fingerprints on. You know that if you can't find your paperwork and you have an incident, that you could come to us and we've got a copy. And that's how it works. And it's really important. We can analyse what the technician's done and whether we think they've missed something out or not. And then that trailer finds its friend the next year and it moves on. That's how the Tilly works. But the app is for daily checks and for people to self-help.
Thank you so much for taking us through both of them. And Jane, just lastly on this point before we move on, what kind of feedback have you had from farmers, from parents? It sounds like the wider industry are pretty supportive as well.
So the industry is really up with it, from the point of view of the trailer manufacturers. They're very, very switched on with the Tilly. Lots of them have talk about daily checks and maintenance in their manual. So that's a really big step forward. We get a 95% re-inspection from the people who have the Tilly. They say, we love that, we've done that. We've had it done. We've got our paperwork. We've done the best we can. We now understand our daily checks. We're going to do those. We're really in control. I've had parents ring me. I had a mother that rang me. She was delighted her son had come to a show that we were at and talked to me. The next day, he'd got papers all printed out. He laid them out and he got the father and the uncle, and he'd really said, right, we're going to do our checks. We're going to take control of this. And he himself took control. She said he was really empowered by that. And that's what we want. Yeah. You mentioned the young farmers. We go and do a quiz with them, and we find that they're really, really into the by the end of it, it's very pressurized and fast and lots of sweets and ringing of bells and there's lots going on. But at the end of it, they can spot check answer all of the questions because they've learned it in that time. That's really important. We are finding a big pickup again. It's disappointing if we lose someone, if they say, oh, we're going to do it every other year or something. It's very disheartening. And you can take it personally, but usually they'll pick back up and re-engage with it.
Yeah, really interesting hearing you sort of talking about gamifying the teaching with young farmers. That's a really interesting approach. So, Dom, we've heard a little bit about sort of the training, and we've heard a little bit about those daily checks, which are helped by the app. When it comes to training and consistency from a risk management perspective, what are the biggest opportunities that you see in your role with Cornish Mutual for reducing accidents on farm?
So I think firstly, it's all around competence and consistency. So making sure the right people are using the right kits with refreshers where needed, and then setting clear rules for some of those higher risk jobs. And in agriculture, most of those jobs are high risk. I think secondly, separating people from danger. I think simple things like traffic routes, safe parking, keeping pedestrians out of vehicle areas, and trying to control access for children and visitors is really important. And then thirdly, and this links back to the Tilly Pass, is maintenance and checks. So trailers, brakes, lights, guards, hydraulics. A lot of incidents start with something really small that's been tolerated for too long. And if you combine those with a culture where near misses are talked about, you get momentum quite quickly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Making sure that those checks become a part of culture, something that a lot of people will need to, well, may not be doing at present. So, Dom, if a farmer is listening and wanted to make sort of one or two really meaningful changes, where would you suggest that they start?
So I think that there's two high impact things you can do right off the bat. So the first is do a sort of walk around of the business and just identify 3 top risks. And this can be done either by themselves or with an employee within the business, and write them down. And write them down in a way that shows the risk to someone, and then just try and fix one of those a month. And I think the benefit of working with employees is it really helps identify what could potentially go wrong on the front line, and also gets them involved from the outset. And then I think secondly is just put a simple routine around checks and permissions. And again, this is where the sort of Tilly Pass link comes in. So who can use what, and just basic pre-use checks for that piece of kit that causes the most harm. Like trailers, telehandlers, ATVs, any PTO-driven equipment. And I know it doesn't sound particularly glamorous, but those sort of changes can prevent life-changing incidents.
It feels to me like it's about normalizing them. I think we can probably all imagine situations where people may take a little bit of offense about being told that they need to look again at something that they might perceive they know how to do well, but actually just taking a step back and trying to look at something with new eyes can be really helpful. Jane, we've heard a lot there from Dom about different ways that we can get across and improve on the record of accidents in farming. Does that match your experience? Are small changes sometimes the most effective?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to point out this point that because we collect the data, we see what causes an incident. So we work a lot with the police. They contact us and say, do you know this trailer? We may say yes or no. We may say it's got an up-to-date inspection, or it may have a fail on it. But it's usually, in our experience, 3 small things wrong with that trailer that have caused an incident, whether it's a near miss or a fatality. Often the information we get is that it's 3 small things that have been neglected, and what one knocks onto the other. So it definitely lines up with that. And I think small changes are moving in the right direction. But what you have to do is not feel embarrassed to ask for help. There's tons of help. We're available all day long. We'll talk to farmers. It doesn't cost you anything. We're not storing and collecting people's personal data and reporting them. It's absolutely there as a helpline. But what we must think about is there is too much reliance put on other self-professed experts There's a lot of talk goes on in farming, and if they think that person's doing it, actually that will be all right. And it often isn't. So it's really important to make sure your changes are recommended. They are the proper change by the manufacturer. And go just reach out and ask, do you think I should do this or that? And whether you've got a tilly or not, we're quite happy to chat to you about trailers.
So, Dom, talking specifically about Cornish Mutual, what initiatives are currently running to support farm safety and reduce accidents?
Yeah, so at Cornish Mutual, we're really focused on supporting members to prevent incidents rather than just dealing with the aftermath. We do that through our risk management and advisory support, where we share practical guidance and resources, using the insight we get from working with lots of farms to highlight the recurring patterns, as we said earlier on in the podcast, especially around vehicles, machinery, yards and lone working. We also use channels like the podcast we're doing right now and wider communications to keep safety on the agenda all year round. And what we try to do is really signpost good practice and engage with other credible initiatives in the industry, such as Tilly Pass, such as the Farm Safety Partnership, because we really need to work collectively to try and solve this problem. It's not just a single company's objective, I suppose.
So, Dom, you talked about the imperative of insurers working proactively. How important is that?
Well, it's really important. Insurers have a duty to handle claims when things go wrong, but we also have a responsibility to help prevent incidents in the first place, or at least reduce their severity if possible. Because we work with a wide range of farms, we can spot recurring risk factors early, share practical insight, and support proportionate prevention. Done properly, it's a partnership. Safer farms mean fewer injuries, less disruption, and stronger, more sustainable rural businesses. We also know how drawn out the consequences can be for our members. Investigations and prosecutions can run over many years. And when cases do reach that stage, the stakes are pretty high. The HSE reports a 96% conviction rate for its criminal prosecutions, which can have a significant impact on any individual or business.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So, Jane, how valuable is that kind of support from organisations like Cornish Mutual when you're trying to drive change across the industry? You've talked about the fact that the Tilly Pass does work with manufacturers and engineers and all that sort of thing, but why is that so important?
Well, it is super important because it's the way of us reaching an individual farm that we don't even know exists. So if you're going onto a farm and making a visit or you're making an assessment for insurance, that you could give them some advice and then they can move on and ask that question. But I think what is really, really important is that we don't cut corners and that we do move forward with that. I think that it's really hard for us to not just deliver that one message about trailers. We are obviously involved, as you said, with the Farm Safety Foundation, and we do look at other sides of things. We're interested in all aspects. We're members of Farm Safety in different parts of the UK, and we do have to all think seriously about it. And children on farms and so on and so forth is really, really important. But we would say just don't cut corners. If you're thinking, is this right or wrong? Then go with the wrong, because invariably, if it's made you stop and think, then there's a reason why it's done that.
Yeah, the fact that you're asking yourself that question suggests that your gut is telling you
Yeah.
that there's something worth readdressing. Brilliant. So, if there's one message that you both really like listeners to go away with today, what would it be? Dom, I'll come to you first.
I think it's starting small and progressing from there. Time pressure and fatigue, it's real within farming.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that resonates a lot with some of the discussion that we had in the series 1, episode 3. We spoke with, I think it was Nick Lay, Paul Mahon, and Cornish Mutual member Fred Collins back then in that episode about safety and about an incident that Fred had on his farm. And the conclusions then were much as they were today. Start small and start doing things every day. Jane, coming to you with the same question, what would you really like listeners to sort of take away from today?
Well, I think we should be quite thoughtful about peer pressure. Don't listen to misinformation. Absolutely do things straightforward and to move forward with that. I think we tend to put quite a lot of emphasis on, when we're doing our root crop carting campaign in the autumn, about having a safety portfolio. And it really does simplify things. So if you think, get a notepad out, write down the list of your machines, write down, when you performed your last maintenance, where we're at with it, what risk assessment we're going to make. But what's really important to remember is that it isn't just about working on the farm. We all anticipate, if we operate a farm machine, that we're entitled to cross the road or use the road as and if we wish. And we need to really think about roadworthiness and how we would feel if something was coming careering towards our family in an oncoming car that wasn't safe. And I do think that people are really willing to make a portfolio, to have a duty of care, and to think about it. Rollover sheets are a huge issue for us at the moment, and making sure it's secure. And if you've got a sheet, push the button and roll it over. I think that's what I would say. If it's there, use it, because it's there for a reason.
So rollover sheets, just for those who are maybe uninitiated, we're talking about on top of trailers that are carting something, you have those sort of tarpaulin type sheets that come over the back to keep the load secure?
Yeah, so there's two thought patterns. You've got the people, that'll never bounce off. They're not coming off of there. So that's our farmer mode. And absolutely, we're driving in a straight line, we're tootling along, and they aren't going to bounce off. They're not going to drop off. But as soon as someone else swerves, or we end up in an incident and that trailer goes over, then the HSE are going to ask you, how did you attempt to load secure in order to not cause someone else to have an accident? And that's where our thought pattern should be. So you should have your straps on correctly. And we did a lot of work with this, and it is really important. There's a lot of work being done with towing Bowsers at the moment, with fueling, and there's all new stickers and new regulations, and all of that work we've done with the dangerous goods carriage with the police. That's all really, really important work. But you should be really thinking about coming off your farm. And we should also be remembering that our machines continue to work when they leave the road. So anything else, caravan, horse box, builder, when we arrive at our destination, we unload, do a job, load up, go home. When we're in agriculture, we're using the machine in a ring-fenced environment. So therefore, it's got to be roadworthy, whether it ever goes on the road or not. There's lots to think about. It's not a simple answer.
There is lots to think about. Fantastic to have your input, both of you. Thank you so much. Jane Gurney and Dom Jones from Cornish Mutual.
Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts.
Wow, what a brilliant conversation we've had today with Jane and Dom. It's up to me now to distill it into just a couple of showstoppers. And the first thing that really comes to mind is that Jane spoke at the end of our conversation about the fact that our machines need to work both on and off the road. And it's important not to just think about the safety of our kit if it's going on public highways. It's important to make sure it's safe in our yards and in our fields as well. I think the first major thing that comes to mind is the importance of forming habits, of making sure that there is a culture whereby we are constantly encouraging all stakeholders on farm to be thinking about the safety of what they're doing and how they're doing it, and making sure that's a part of their day to day. If we come down to a bit of a more granular level, Dom talked about identifying our top 3 risks and making sure that we're trying to address these, perhaps address one a week, one a month, and making sure that we come back to that list of risks, we revisit it and we revise it, especially if we've mitigated one of the risks and we move on to look at our next top 3. But finally, communication is something that came through. We often hear about it in different contexts on the podcast. And Jane spoke about the need to communicate externally. It's about taking responsibility for looking at risks and what we're doing internally and talking to members of our team. That might be our parents if we're working with them on farm. It might be employees. It might be, if you're an employee listening to this, having the confidence to talk to your business owners about what's going on, but also talking externally with manufacturers and people like Tilly Trailer Park who can help us to make sure that everything we're doing is as safe as possible.
Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts.
That's it for today's episode. A huge thank you again to both my guests. Please do join us next week for the bonus episode when we'll be looking at how to create a positive culture in the industry when it comes to farm safety. We'd love to hear from you with any feedback that you have about the podcast, be it questions or suggestions. So do send us an email to podcast@cornishmutual.co.uk. Check out the show notes for more information on today's episode, including our podcast disclaimer. You've been listening to Farming Focus, brought to you by Cornish Mutual. I've been Peter Green. Until next time, it's goodbye from me and everyone in the Cornish Mutual podcast team.
Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts.